He always said the frontier had a strange way of throwing lives together, like tumbleweeds meeting in the same wind. But that night, the wind carried something no man expected. Midnight settled over Redwater Gulch, the kind of mining town whose glory had died long before its citizens did. Lanterns flickered low, saloons buzzed with tired laughter, and the dirt streets glimmered with frost. Winter was coming early, curling around the buildings like a warning. And outside the Coyote Moon Saloon, someone left a basket at the door. At first, no one heard the faint whimper. The piano was too loud, the shouting too careless. Men gambled away their wages. Women laughed like they were trying to outrun heartbreak. Life inside the saloon was wild, but the world outside was painfully still. Then the wind shifted, carrying a cry soft enough to break the night. The baby shivered in her thin blanket. She couldn't have been more than a few days old. Her tiny fingers curled in the cold air, reaching for warmth that wasn't there. Snowflakes caught on her eyelashes. Her breath puffed like fragile smoke. And then, the door swung open. A man stepped out, seeking quiet after too many memories clawed at him. Luke Branning, a drifter with a jaw carved by hardship and eyes dulled by loss, paused when he saw the basket at his boots. He froze. Not because he didn't know what he was looking at, but because he knew exactly what it meant. His hand trembled as he bent down, lifting the blanket with a gentleness that didn't match his rugged frame. A pair of pale blue eyes blinked up at him. No judgment, no fear, just me. Luke inhaled sharply, something tight closing around his chest. "Who'd leave you out here, little one?" he murmured. Behind him, the saloon's noise spilled out. Inside was warmth, whiskey, distraction. Out here was a life someone had abandoned in the freezing dark. A life he wasn't sure he had the strength to hold. He looked up and scanned the street. No footsteps, no shadow running away, no mother desperate enough to stay and explain. Nothing but the cold and the baby's soft cry. His past whispered cruel things in his ear. He wasn't father material. He wasn't even good company. He didn't stay anywhere long enough to make a difference. But the baby didn't know that. She only knew she was cold. With a breath that felt like a promise he hadn't decided to make, Luke lifted her gently into his arms. The baby quieted, nuzzling into his coat. And inside, at the far table where the lantern burned lowest, another pair of eyes watched the scene unfold. Clara Beaumont, the preacher's runaway daughter, tough as nails, lonely as the desert, and desperate for redemption. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Lord, is this the sign I asked for?" 2 strangers, 1 baby, and a night that would bind their lives forever. The baby weighed almost nothing, and somehow everything. Luke Branning stood at the saloon door, snow swirling around him like white ghosts whispering old regrets. The frontier wasn't kind to the weak, and the night wasn't kind to the abandoned. But the small life inside his coat didn't understand the rules of survival. She only knew the warmth of his chest, and the steady beat beneath it. Luke swallowed hard. Inside, laughter rose, wild, thoughtless, the sound of men who'd learned to numb themselves. He knew that feeling well. He'd ridden into Redwater Gulch hoping to disappear for a few days, to drown memories of a wife and child lost to fever 3 winters back. He didn't come for purpose, or redemption, or second chances. He came to forget. And yet here he was, holding a reason to remember. The door creaked again. A woman stepped into the cold. Not just any woman, Clara Beaumont. Her dark hair was braided in a way that tried, unsuccessfully, to hide the weariness in her face. She was young, but sorrow had aged her eyes into something old, something searching. Her shawl was patched, her boots worn through at the toes, but she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had survived too much to pretend anymore. Luke tensed. He wasn't good with conversations, especially with strangers, especially women. Clara didn't speak at first. She simply looked at the baby tucked against his chest, a soft bundle trembling in a world too cold. Something flickered in her expression, something painful, tender, and frightening all at once. Then she whispered, voice barely audible beneath the wind, "Let me see her." Luke hesitated, words stuck in his throat. But the baby whimpered, and Clara reached out with steady, gentle hands, the kind that had soothed siblings, held dying parents, carried burdens no girl her age should carry. Luke slowly allowed her to pull back the blanket. Clara gasped. She's freezing. A moment passed, and her voice lowered. Who would leave her like this? Luke shook his head. Don't know. Didn't see no one. Clara swallowed like she was holding back something sharp. She needs heat and milk. Maybe hours of it. She knew things, Luke realized. She wasn't guessing. She had been around infants, maybe many. He cleared his throat. The saloon's warm, but it ain't the place for a... He looked down at the baby, her tiny fingers clutching his coat like she had chosen him. For her. Clara nodded. Then, with a courage forged from heartbreak, she said softly, "My cabin's just behind the chapel. Small, poor, but I have a fire going, and goat's milk from this morning." Luke stared at her. At the girl who had been invisible minutes ago, now offering something the baby needed more than anything. "Why'd you help?" he asked quietly. Clara met his eyes, her voice as fragile as a confession. "Because once, someone left me too." The wind howled across the empty street, and in that moment, two strangers understood each other in a way words couldn't hold. Luke nodded. "Lead the way." And together, under the falling snow, they carried the baby toward the dim lantern glow of a cabin that neither of them knew would become the beginning of everything. Clara's cabin stood like a small, stubborn ember at the edge of Redwater Gulch, a single-room shelter pressed against the old chapel's shadow. The snow had softened the world into a hush, and as Luke followed her up the narrow path, the only sounds were their boots crushing frost and the baby's soft, hungry breaths. Luke wasn't sure what he expected. Maybe cold walls, a broken stove, the emptiness that comes with poverty. But when Clara pushed open the door, warm firelight spilled into the night, and the scent of herbs and baked cornbread drifted toward them. Luke blinked. Clara may have been poor, but she kept her little home gentle. "Lay her here," Clara murmured, clearing a spot on a patched quilt near the fire. Luke knelt, hands trembling as he loosened his coat. The baby whimpered when the cold air brushed her skin, and Clara quickly wrapped her in a fresh blanket, thin but warm. She held the little one close, rocking slowly, instinctively, like she'd been waiting her whole life to hold something fragile again. Luke sat back on his heels, watching her. She moved with a quiet grace, the kind that comes from sorrow turned into gentleness. "What's her name?" Clara asked. Luke shook his head. "Ain't no note, no mark, nothin'." Clara's eyes clouded. Then someone wanted to disappear. Or had no choice. The silence that followed held more truth than either dared admit. Clara dipped a cloth in warm water and wiped the baby's tiny hands, cheeks, and eyelids, each touch slow, deliberate. Then she warmed a cup of goat's milk and fed the little girl with a rag-wrapped spoon. Luke felt something shift in the room. A softness. A purpose. Something he had forgotten how to feel. Clara glanced up at him, her voice gentler now. "She's weak, but strong enough to fight if she's given care." Luke nodded, jaw tight. "Reckon she deserves that." Clara hesitated, then studied his face with new curiosity. "You look like a man used to carrying loss." Luke stiffened. No one said things like that to him. Not even friends, not that he had many left. Clara didn't apologize. She just held the baby a little closer, adding softly, "I know that look because I carry it too." The fire cracked. Shadows moved across the walls, merging the three of them into a single story neither had meant to begin. Luke cleared his throat. "I appreciate your help, truly. But when morning comes, I'll take her to the sheriff. Maybe someone's looking." Clara nodded slowly, though her eyes betrayed her. "Of course," she whispered. But her hands tightened around the baby, as if she already knew the truth the morning would bring. No mother was coming back. No footsteps would echo in the snow. And no lawman could give the baby what she needed most. A home. A heart. Warm arms that didn't vanish. Luke didn't want to linger. Didn't want to feel this room pulling something tender out of him. But he stayed. He stayed because the baby murmured, curling into Clara's shoulder like she belonged there. And because Clara hummed a soft tune, an old hymn twisted with loneliness, that made the cold inside his chest crack. When the flames settled low, Clara finally whispered, "Maybe, the three of us were meant to cross paths tonight." The storm outside only grew harsher as the night deepened, scraping against Clara's cabin like a restless spirit. Snow slapped at the windows. Wind groaned in the chimney. But inside was the warm crackle of firelight and the soft, steady sound of a newborn's breath. Luke sat near the door, hat on his knee, boots still dusted with snow. He looked like a man ready to leave at any second, and yet completely unable to move. Clara stayed close to the fire, rocking the baby in small, careful motions. The little girl had fallen asleep, but Clara's eyes remained wide open, studying her as though memorizing every fragile detail. After a long quiet stretch, Clara spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "You hold her like you've done it before." Luke winced, just slightly. "I have." "Your child?" she asked softly. Luke tried to answer, but grief moved through him like a slow, sharp blade. He stared at the fire instead of her. "Had a daughter once." His voice cracked in places he'd hoped were hardened long ago. "Sickened quick. Fever took her and my wife in the same week." Clara lowered her head, eyes soft with an ache she didn't try to hide. "I'm sorry," she breathed. Luke nodded, swallowing the sting. A man ain't supposed to bury what he loves most. Clara looked at the sleeping baby, gently adjusting the blanket around her tiny shoulders. "No," she whispered, "but life seems to give that pain freely anyway." The fire popped, and Clara's gaze softened, not with pity, but with understanding. She had her own ghosts. Her own hurt. Luke noticed her hands shaking slightly. "What about you? You said someone left you once." Clara froze. The truth hovered between them like fragile glass. "Not left," she murmured. "Given away." Luke frowned. "My mother died when I was 12. My father, he's the minister in town. Good man. But he didn't know what to do with a daughter who couldn't be perfect, who couldn't be the quiet preacher's girl everyone wanted." Luke studied her face. "What couldn't you be?" he asked. Clara gave a small, humorless laugh. "Obedient, silent, pious enough. I had questions he didn't like. I read books a girl shouldn't read. And one night, when I refused to marry the man he picked." Her breath hitched, memory cutting deep. "He locked the door, told me I could come back when I learned to obey." Luke's jaw tightened. "And you left?" Clara nodded. "With nothing but a shawl and my mother's hymn book." Silence fell, a heavy, shared kind of silence. One built from loss, from longing, from wounds that never quite healed right. The baby stirred, a tiny sigh, a tiny stretch of tiny fingers toward Clara's chin. Clara smiled, the first true smile Luke had seen from her. "You know," he murmured, "she took to you quick." Clara glanced down, cheeks warming like she'd been caught loving too deeply, too soon. "She's just small," she whispered. "Small things like this don't survive without someone to love them." Luke looked at her, really looked, and felt something shift under his ribs. "Maybe," he said softly, "that's true for more than just babies." The saloon was quiet in the late afternoon, the kind of quiet that came only after the gamblers had lost their money and the drinkers had lost their balance. Dust slept in the warm light drifting through the swinging doors, and for the first time since morning, Cole Hartman had a moment to breathe. He leaned on the bar, polishing a glass more out of habit than duty. His eyes were heavy, not from tiredness, but from the weight of a life spent drifting. A former gunslinger had no business owning a saloon, but life had a funny way of trapping a man in the places he least expected. Then, a single sound cracked the silence. A small, sharp cry. Not the cry of a drunk or a stray cat. A baby. Cole straightened, every instinct sharpened. He stepped out from behind the bar, boots whispering across the floorboards. At the entrance, framed by golden light, sat the wooden crate they'd found earlier. But now the blanket inside stirred, and a pair of tiny fists punched through the folds. The baby's cry lifted again, small and desperate. Cole knelt slowly, like a man approaching a miracle with trembling hands. "Hey there, little one," he whispered, voice rough with a tenderness he hadn't used in years. The baby blinked up at him, wide eyes, shining like river stones. Eyes that shouldn't have known fear, and yet, they did. Before he could lift the child, the side door creaked open. Lily Marin emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Is he crying again?" she asked softly. "He's just scared," Cole murmured. "So are you," Lily said, a gentle truth she didn't try to soften. She moved beside him and knelt. She didn't touch the baby at first, just watched him, the way a woman who had lost too much sometimes did. Lily carried a quiet sorrow, the kind that settled in her eyes and lived there, uninvited but familiar. Cole finally lifted the baby into his arms. He expected panic. He expected clumsy hands and a louder wail. Instead, the child settled against his chest, tiny fingers curling into Cole's shirt. Like he recognized him, like he belonged there. Lily exhaled softly. "He trusts you." Cole shook his head. "No, just needed holding." "Everyone does," she said. But the warmth of the moment cracked as heavy footsteps thundered outside. A shadow crossed the light pouring through the doors. The boards on the porch groaned under a weight too familiar to Cole. A man stepped inside. Broad shoulders. A revolver at each hip. Eyes cold enough to freeze a river. "Afternoon," he said, voice thick with gravel. His gaze drifted to the baby in Cole's arms, and tightened like a fist. "I'm looking for something that belongs to me." Lily stiffened. Cole shifted the baby closer to his chest. "What exactly is it you're looking for?" Cole asked. The stranger smiled without warmth. "A child. My child. And I aim to take him home." The saloon held its breath. Lily's hand slid toward the counter. Cole felt the baby's small heartbeat press against his ribs. And in that fragile silence, one truth settled like dust on the floorboards. Sometimes fate didn't give a man a choice. Sometimes it delivered a child into his arms, and trouble through his doors. The wind rattled the saloon shutters like bones in a tin can, and the night outside pressed against the room with a cold that felt almost alive. Inside, lantern light trembled over the wooden floorboards, stretching long shadows behind Clara, behind Eli, and behind the stranger who stood framed in the doorway. Eli's hand hovered near his revolver. Clara held the baby tighter, breath caught like a bird trapped behind her ribs. For a long moment, the stranger said nothing. Snow clung to his coat in white flecks. His boots were worn down to thin leather. His hat drooped with weather and time. And yet, it was his eyes that made Clara's heart jolt. They were dark, unreadable, the kind of eyes that looked like they had seen too much and felt too little. A man like that could be anything. A drifter. A danger. A ghost with a pulse. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, rough from cold or grief. It was impossible to tell. "I ain't here to cause trouble." But men who said that often did. Eli didn't move. "State your business." The stranger's gaze drifted to the baby, sleeping now, tiny fingers curled like wildflowers at rest, and something flickered across his face. Pain, recognition, regret. Clara couldn't place it, but it wasn't the look of a villain. It was the look of someone who had come a long way to face something he wasn't ready to face. "I saw the child," the stranger said softly. "Out front, in the snow." Clara swallowed. Did you leave her there?" The man shook his head. "No, ma'am, but I knew her mother." Eli's shoulders tensed, hand brushing the grip of his gun. The stranger lifted his palms slowly, empty, open. "Not that way. I wasn't her husband, wasn't her kin. Just someone who crossed paths with her once, long enough to know she didn't deserve whatever end found her." Clara felt her breath return, inch by inch. She was scared, the man went on. Said she didn't have long. Said the child would have a better chance with decent folk than with the men hunting her. Eli's eyes narrowed. Hunting her? But the stranger shook his head. A misunderstanding. A debt she didn't owe. Wrong people got the wrong idea. He sighed, heavy with the weight of things he couldn't fix. "I've been trying to find the baby since. Make sure she wasn't left alone in some ditch." He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't cruel. He was just tired. A soul drifting with the wind in the winter. Clara felt her grip loosen. "She's safe now," she whispered. The stranger nodded once, deeply. Relief softened the harsh lines of his face. "I ain't here to take her," he said. "Just needed to see she was with the right folks." Eli finally eased away from his gun. "Then you picked a hell of a night," he said quietly. The stranger managed a thin, sad smile. "Ma'am, sir, for a child like her, I'd walk through worse." Outside, the storm howled on, but inside, the danger had passed. Or so they believed. The storm outside had eased to a slow, mournful hush, the kind of quiet that settles heavy on the land after something important has shifted. Inside the saloon, the lantern flame drifted sideways as a cold draft pushed through the room. Clara tightened her shawl. Eli watched the stranger with the same stillness as a wolf watching another wander into its woods. The man lowered himself into a chair near the door, not fully stepping into the room, as if afraid his presence might crack something fragile inside it. "I won't stay long," he said. "Just need a minute to catch my breath." Clara wasn't sure if he meant the cold, or the memories. Eli nodded stiffly. "Sit, talk, no sudden moves." The stranger gave a faint huff, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "I ain't the sudden move type anymore." The baby stirred in Clara's arms, a tiny whimper, the smallest fold of a new life trying to understand the world. Clara rocked her gently, whispering soft nonsense words the way her mother once had. The stranger's eyes followed the movement, gently, almost reverently. "Her name," he murmured, "was Lily." Clara's head lifted. "The mother?" He nodded. "Picked the name 'cause she said a girl deserved something that grew even in hard places." Clara's heart tightened. Eli leaned against the bar. "You said men were after her. That it was a misunderstanding." The stranger's jaw tightened. "It was. But misunderstandings have teeth." His fingers tapped the table, slow, measured, like someone counting miles they wished they could forget. "She was in the wrong town at the wrong time. Some fella claimed she stole from him. She didn't, but the story spread faster than she could outrun it." Clara felt a chill run through her, not from the wind. "So she ran with the baby?" she whispered. The man nodded, tried to get far enough that the lies wouldn't catch up. His voice dropped. "I tried to help, but she didn't trust me. Can't blame her. Folks don't trust broken men." "You look more tired than broken," Clara said softly. A glimmer of something, gratitude, maybe, crossed his face. But then the stranger's expression shifted, hardened, like he was forcing himself back into reality. "She told me, if anything happened to her, the baby should go to people better than the world she knew." His gaze lifted to Clara and Eli. "You two look better than most." Clara swallowed. Eli said nothing. The stranger stood slowly, tugging his coat straight. "Storm's letting up. I should go." Clara didn't want him to. Not because she trusted him, not yet, but because something in his voice sounded like a book that hadn't finished telling its story. He reached for the door, then paused. "There's something else," he said quietly. "Something you ought to know." Eli stiffened again. "What?" The stranger turned halfway, snow-lit wind outlining him like a ghost caught between worlds. "Those men, the ones who were chasing Lily?" A long breath. "They're not far behind me." Clara felt the room stretch, the lantern flame tremble, the entire night lean toward a single chilling truth. Danger hadn't passed them. It was on its way. Outside, the wind carried whispers like ghosts across the snow-crusted streets of Redwater Gulch. The saloon lanterns flickered, trembling in rhythm with the storm that had returned. Clara held the baby closer, feeling her small heartbeat against her chest, trying to anchor herself in something living, warm, and real. Eli paced by the window, eyes scanning the dark street, muscles tight like coiled steel. The story the stranger had told haunted him. The men pursuing the child, shadows from a past no one wanted to remember, creeping closer with every heartbeat. "Do you think they'll find us?" Clara whispered, barely audible. Eli shook his head slowly. "If they're as determined as he says, maybe. But that doesn't mean we run blind." The baby stirred, tiny hands brushing against Clara's cheek. For a moment, her worry softened. One life in her arms, fragile and pure, reminded her why they couldn't give in to fear. And yet, fear was patient. It waited in corners, in cold drafts, in the sound of distant hoofbeats. A sudden knock rattled the saloon door. A single, deliberate strike. Not timid, not casual, each rap cut through the room like a warning. Eli moved toward it first, hand on his revolver. Clara followed, careful not to wake the baby. The door swung open slowly. A figure emerged, framed by moonlight and blowing snow. It was the stranger, his coat dusted with frost, hat pulled low. He carried nothing in his hands, but his eyes burned with a warning only those who had survived long nights on the frontier could read. "They're close," he said, voice low, urgent. "We don't have much time." Clara swallowed hard. Who are they?" "Hunters," the stranger replied. "Not like you think. No badges, no law. Just men who believe the baby holds something owed to them. I can't explain all of it, but they're not far. And they won't hesitate." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then we hide." The three of them, Clara, Eli, and the stranger moved quickly, covering the baby with blankets. Clara whispered softly, rocking her little charge. "It's okay, little one. It's okay, we'll keep you safe." The stranger's eyes scanned the windows, the rooftops, the shadows stretching across the snow. "We can't just wait. They'll find us if we do." Eli nodded. "Then we take her somewhere they won't look. Fast." The wind howled as the plan formed, improvised but necessary. They would move through back alleys, through the chapel grounds, across snowdrifts that would swallow footprints and confuse pursuers. Every step was tense, measured, a dance with danger that could turn deadly with a single mistake. The baby murmured in her sleep, unaware of the storm encroaching. For Clara, that fragile life became both a burden and a beacon. Every step she took, every careful whisper, every heartbeat reminded her why she could not fail, not now, not ever. The stranger glanced at them, expression unreadable. "Stick close, stay quiet, and whatever happens, don't let anyone take her from you." Outside, hoofbeats began to drum softly through the snow. Shadows shifted along the frozen streets. And in the silent moment before the chaos would strike, Clara realized this. Sometimes the fiercest battles were fought not with guns, but with hearts brave enough to hold hope, even in the dead of night. The night was merciless. Snow fell in thick, choking flakes, turning Redwater Gulch into a ghost town of white. Every step Clara and Eli took felt heavier than the last, their boots sinking into drifts that threatened to swallow them whole. The baby, swaddled tightly against Clara's chest, slept quietly, unaware of the danger pursuing them. The stranger led the way, moving like a shadow himself, every sense alert. His eyes flicked constantly, catching shapes, listening for sounds that could betray their path. He had spent years reading danger in silence, and tonight, that skill was the only thing keeping them alive. "They're close," he whispered, voice taut with urgency. "I can hear them moving through the side streets. They think this is just a simple child to steal, but it's more than that. They'll kill if they have to." Clara gripped the baby tighter. She had never held a life so fragile before, yet the weight of it filled her with a strange strength. Every flake of snow, every shadow, every distant echo of hooves pressed against her fear, but also against her resolve. Eli's hand brushed against the grip of his revolver, and his jaw tightened. "We'll lose them if we keep moving straight. We need cover, the chapel." The stranger nodded. "Good. They won't expect it, and it's close enough for a shortcut. But we have to move fast." They slipped through alleys, shadows merging with snow, every step silent but tense. Clara's heart hammered in her chest as she imagined faces, menacing and unseen, waiting to snatch away the child she had vowed to protect. When they reached the chapel, its doors creaked under their touch. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and candle wax, the silence thick and reverent. Clara placed the baby down on a pew, covering her with her shawl. For a moment, the little one stirred, and Clara whispered softly, "It's okay, you're safe for now." The stranger and Eli positioned themselves near the entrance, eyes scanning the snow-drenched windows. They could hear faint footsteps crunching in the distance. Every second felt like a minute, every breath a countdown. "They're splitting up," the stranger murmured. "Two coming from the east, one from the south. They're coordinated." Clara's stomach twisted. She had never been in a fight. She had never needed courage beyond carrying her own sorrow. But now, the lives of two strangers and one innocent child depended on her calm, her presence, her voice. Eli's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "We stick together. You're part of this now too." Clara nodded, steadying herself. She realized that night, amid the storm and shadow, that courage didn't mean fearlessness. It meant keeping your heart open even when everything around you wanted to break it. Outside, the sound of hooves grew louder, the crunch of boots in snow sharper. Shadows moved closer, but Clara met the stranger's eyes and felt a strange calm. They would face this together, strangers bound by fate, a baby between them, hearts unafraid to hope. And in that moment, Clara understood the truth of the frontier. Love, protection, and bravery were forged in the coldest storms, and tonight, they would prove it. The snowstorm had begun to fade, leaving Redwater Gulch quiet but bruised by the night's chaos. The chapel stood solemn and still, a lone beacon of warmth in the frozen wilderness. Inside, Clara cradled the baby, while Eli and the stranger kept watch near the doors. The tension that had gripped them for hours began to loosen, though every sound outside made them flinch. Then, the faint crunch of boots on snow drew closer. The strangers at the saloon, the ones chasing shadows and stories, hesitated at the chapel doors. Their confidence faltered in the face of something they had not anticipated: determination, courage, and the quiet unity of those who would protect the innocent. The stranger, voice low and firm, stepped forward. "This ends tonight. Back away, or you'll regret underestimating us." Silence, thick and tense, hung in the air. The footsteps stopped, shadows paused, and then, slowly, the pursuers turned, retreating into the night. Perhaps they feared the resolve in the stranger's gaze, or perhaps the quiet conviction of Clara and Eli. Whatever the reason, the danger passed. Clara exhaled, a tremor in her breath, and held the baby closer. "It's over, it's finally over." Eli leaned against the doorframe, loosening his grip on his revolver. "For now," he murmured, though his eyes held relief. The stranger approached, finally allowing himself a small, tired smile. "She's safe, and in good hands." Clara looked up at him, gratitude shining through her weariness. "We couldn't have done this without you." He shook his head. "No, you did it. You had the courage to care. That's what saved her." The baby stirred, opening her tiny eyes to the warm glow of lanterns and the sheltering arms around her. Clara whispered, "You're home now, no more running." Eli stepped closer, a protective hand brushing Clara's shoulder. "Looks like the three of us have a lot to figure out," he said softly. Clara smiled through exhaustion. "Then we'll figure it out, together." Outside, the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, painting the snow in gold and rose. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world seemed alive, promising, forgiving. The stranger gazed at the rising sun, hands resting in his coat pockets. "Sometimes the wind carries more than dust and sorrow," he said quietly. "It carries hope, and maybe, second chances." Clara looked at Eli and the baby, her heart swelling. "And maybe a family," she whispered. The baby yawned, tiny fingers curling around Clara's shawl, as if sensing the truth of her words. Eli smiled for the first time that night, warmth spreading from his chest outward. "Then let's start," he said. "A family. Here, now." The stranger nodded once, tipping his hat with a faint grin. "I'll ride on for now, but I'll always be near, keeping an eye." As he mounted his horse and rode off into the dawn-lit horizon, Clara and Eli looked at each other, hearts heavy with past sorrows but light with newfound hope. The baby cooed softly, a small sound that carried more promise than any words ever could. In Redwater Gulch, a family had been forged not by blood alone, but by courage, love, and the willingness to protect what mattered most. And as the wind carried their story across the snow, it whispered a simple truth. Even in the coldest, darkest places, hope could bloom, and love could endure. The frontier was wide, the world was harsh, but for Clara, Eli, and the baby, the future was theirs to hold, together.